What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Partially Cultured I can't even talk today. The Partially Cultured podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Aaron, and with me, as always, is our co-host, Alan and Isaac.
How's it going, guys?
Not too bad today. Hadn't been too bad. Can't complain. Remember, guys, if you want to go check out our website, partiallycultured.com. All the links to our social media and stuff are there. You can drop us a line. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If you have any questions for us or anything like that, that's where you can do all that at partiallycultured.com. Now, that being said, are you gentlemen ready for the topic of the day?
Yep. You've already given us a little inkling of what we're going to talk about, so kind of excited about it.
So we are going to dive into JFK and why he was the greatest president. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. Why all the controversy and conspiracy surrounds the death of JFK. So, first question. Do you guys believe in JFK?
And that he existed as a
Yes.
person? That he was a real entity? Yes.
Okay, we just want to make sure we have a baseline.
Define
JFK.
We want to make sure we have a baseline for this topic, because I know we had a topic last week that we all didn't agree. So I want to get a baseline.
Yeah.
Hold up. Is that like a real conspiracy thing where some people think that it's like he
didn't?
I haven't heard that one. Okay, I'm like, you never know nowadays. But I'm like, shit, maybe I should read up on that. That sounds interesting.
No, we're just now going to start that conspiracy with this podcast.
Yeah,
someone's gonna hear just a little piece of
the Wikipedia entry next week. We see that
it's all fake videos.
According to partiallycultured.com, citing zero references.
The trusted news source. Citing zero references.
This wiki article I put up earlier.
All right,
cool.
So JFK, lots of stuff surrounding JFK. We're talking Teamsters and talking mob ties and talking Marilyn Monroe. We're talking government conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think just having all those things associated with him makes him a perfect target for a conspiracy or for any of the issues that we see or we hear about with it.
It's true. I mean,
if he was just a no-name senator that nobody knows about, Bernie Sanders. Well, if it wasn't Bernie Sanders, just thinking of somebody else out there that has no ties to anything in the media, nobody cares. Like, nobody's going to make any fuss or anything about him. Even if he was assassinated, it's not even it could be a huge deal. But when you're talking about somebody that's been, politically charged, with issues with Russia, I mean, you get the Cuban Missile Conflict. You have, the fact that he's a Democrat, versus Republican, that whole thing back in that, in that era was kind of iffy, kind of weird. And then his ties, like you said, to the mob and some other political entities that are questionable or kind of they bring up issues to people's minds, at least. So,
well,
I think a lot to him.
I think that, and then you combine that with the fact that, it's the '60s, late to early '60s, right? I mean, late '50s, early '60s, where he's kind of coming up, and and it's like the advent of the TV age, right? Like the early '50s when most people start getting TVs, or then late '50s, people are they're becoming cheaper in price, they become more affordable. By the early '60s, a lot of homes, even relatively poor homes, have televisions in their house. So the president kind of morphs from being this, this person that you hear about in the paper or that you read about or that you see occasionally for the State of the Union or something, to this guy that see all the time. You hear about on the 10 o'clock news. It's in your house. It's not on the radio. You see the pictures of this guy, videos of this guy all the time. And then he's like a very charismatic young guy, right? It's like a lot of ladies probably liked him.
He's like the
Hearing about
Elvis
gossip.
Presley of
Yeah,
presidents.
yeah, yeah. And then you can even combine that with like just how much the culture was shifting in that era. You have like like all the race stuff that was going on, all the music that was going on, then you have the Cold War in the middle of it. It's like all this change, and then you have this guy who like is super charismatic, and he's like telling you everything's gonna be okay, and he's dreaming big about fucking putting people on the moon and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's like I don't know, it probably hit home to people a lot and made them feel more comforted, right? And like more at home or more at peace in this volatile time. Because like something about JFK, he wasn't around for that long, right? Like he wasn't, and he didn't do crazy things in terms of like the political scape. So like he's endured and he's beloved like a lot more than some other presidents, right?
Maybe
So it's
more
like,
than
what
he
about
even deserved, honestly.
you know what I'm saying? And that's why it's like, what is it? Is it that? Is it the whole like beginning of the TV thing and all that and all the what he symbolized, or is it how he ended?
I think
Like what was it?
I think you're right about the coming of the TV age and stuff, and because I mean everybody knows the speech, right? It's not ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I mean, these are things that everybody saw, because they're not, and presidents don't give speeches like that anymore.
Well, if you did, you'd be freaking ostracized. Like, why would you say that?
Right? And people in general don't think about the country the same way they used to. I mean, it's a totally different shift in society and politics. So, I mean, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to it. I think it was the right time and the right place, for him to blow up, I guess, and become this icon. So, and I obviously, dying young,
For all kinds of reasons.
dying young, and how he died. I mean, obviously, is going to.
Yeah, and then it wasn't just him; it was like his brother, right? His brother is involved, and later that happens to him, and then all the like rumors and gossip, right? Like the Marilyn Monroe stuff, and then there's like the mafia and his dad his dad had connects with the Prohibition era, and and all the Packies and stuff, and it's like
Question is, how many of
like
them are true?
well,
I mean, what do we know?
What do you guys think happened? What do you guys? So Lee Harvey Oswald or not Lee Harvey Oswald? Lee Harvey Oswald, independently crazy guy, or Lee Harvey Oswald, like secret agent, CIA operative? Like where are we
I
at?
think we can get there. I think we're doing the right thing. We're kind of stepping towards that. But like, I think that some of those are true. I mean, there's some pretty good evidence that he hung out with Marilyn Monroe and everything like that. So it's not like it's just like, oh, that's not even possible. It's definitely plausible and definitely more on the true side of things.
Well,
his family, that family has always had connections, and it's not unreasonable
That's
for them
the
to
thing.
have something to do with the Prohibition era, money.
Well, they
and
have
stuff.
proof of that stuff,
Right.
right? Like they have. I feel like that's part of the thing that's kept it alive. Is that like it was like these rumors and gossip that like over the years, be like, oh yeah, that was true. Oh yeah, that connection was real.
Well, I mean, being a man and knowing how men think, I mean, Marilyn Monroe, come on. Yeah, we know what was going on there. I mean, come on.
Well, you also have to think about. I mean, look at his predecessors, old men, mostly war heroes and stuff, or people that were in the military-industrial complex, that type of thing. I mean, this is pretty boy, hot wife, basically. You know what I mean? Like, he's in the new age, like you said, the TV age. They have that they did that comparison with who was it? It was Kennedy versus who's the other president I'm thinking of?
Nixon.
Yeah, Nixon. Sorry, blanked on it. Yeah, so they had both of them in a presidential debate, and they asked the listeners on the radio and the ones that did it on TV or that watched it on TV, who do they think won? And the people that listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon won. People that watched it on TV thought that Kennedy won. So there's a huge, he got a huge rise out of people just because of his, of his looks and his demeanor, his charismatic, abilities and stuff. Maybe less so than his actual knowledge and capabilities. But,
Right.
I mean, a picture says 1,000 words, man, and that's like you can say a lot with just one image than versus one word, right? Like, and if you know how to sell yourself on that camera, right, and you're charismatic, you could say something that you smirk at, or you reply with like a like looking down at the guy or making a face or something like that, and that changes the entire context of what you're listening to, right? It's like I could see where maybe someone saw it and he did any of those things or gave some quick little look or a smirk or something like that, how that could completely change the perception of who won or why he did or didn't engage. And not only that, but like it's a popularity contest when it comes down to it, and he's super charismatic, he's a good looking guy, and then on top of that he was hella presidential, right? Like, I'll give the guy that. You know what I mean, so he's kind of groomed to be that person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So
I wonder how I wonder how the family, and I don't know a whole bunch of the history behind the Kennedys. I know that they have some ties here and there, with the mobs and such. Again, you said Prohibition era, that type of thing. But I mean, when you conduct yourselves with those kinds of people, you have to act kind of businesslike. You know what I mean? And your family has to as well. So I mean, you probably learned some of that from that. There's some odd things, but I mean, if you're a politician in Boston area around that time, you probably got some pretty good money. You probably got some other things going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, his family was notorious for like that's how for them coming up essentially through Prohibition, right? Like them becoming bootleggers and smugglers and all that kind of jazz. And I don't know how much of that is accurate or not, but a lot has been made of that, and a lot of that stuff has been proven to be at least partially accurate, right? A lot of like the mob type stuff with the father, right, and his dad, and like a lot of the connects and how much money he put into his sons and grooming them and all that kind of jazz. A lot of that stuff's been proven real. There's a lot of the whole possibility of like his assassination being retaliation from the mob because of the embargo at Cuba and how it messed up a bunch of their plans they had for Havana, or their retaliation because of him essentially doing a bunch of RICO cases and going after his brother, which in turn would be him, right? Going after the mob, right, and targeting leadership and stuff like that. Like
it's like a real life Johnny Dangerously. If you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's exactly why. So, if some of those things are true, then it's less likely that it's a conspiracy or that there's not a conspiracy there, right? Because at that point, there's reasons why people would target him. It's not like this was like a totally innocent guy that had no connections to anything.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and he just gets assassinated.
Going back to the mob thing, I mean, it wasn't just the fact that he failed to overthrow Cuba or whatever. It was because the mob had already given him something, and they expected him something in return, right?
Yeah,
so I mean,
Chicago,
Illinois, right? I mean, that's the conspiracy. Like, hey, I think you better vote for old JFK, buddy. And
they got all the Teamsters and all the
Yeah,
unions
and
to
they
kinda-
and it was like, okay, well, we'll get you in there, but now you owe us, a little something, something. He's like, can't do it.
little United States of Cuba.
Yeah,
I know there's a rumor, and I don't know how true it is, but there was a rumor that somebody in the Federal Reserve wanted to go after him because he wanted to do away with the Federal Reserve banking system that we had.
I did not hear that. Okay, well, this
Yeah.
this episode's over. I know who killed him.
So that would be a huge conspirator if I thought. If
that's
you can believe it.
That's a big one. I had not heard that.
Yeah.
But people don't talk about it much. But
I
he
wonder
did
why.
mention-
Or the people that do don't talk about it for long.
There was mention of him wanting to pay off the debt,
Yeah.
and
Go back to gold.
basically going back to a gold standard, which is non-democratic based on just like the history of
hold on.
Democrats in that period.
Hold on. The gold standard, we didn't remove the gold standard until the 70s.
No,
It was like 71.
we removed it in.
I'm pretty sure. Let me look. Maybe I'm stupid.
Well, you weren't allowed to have gold after Woodrow Wilson's tenure.
Remove the gold standard.
1933.
Not that one.
U.S. stopped in 1933 and abandoned the remnants of the system in 1973, but we stopped using it in 1933.
Of the actual system, right? But the Federal Reserve Act was started by Woodrow Wilson, or was
Wait, hold on.
passed by.
So 71, the Nixon shock was a series of economic measures undertaken by United States President Richard Nixon in 1971 in response to increasing inflation.
FDR stopped it in 1933.
Okay, so, all right, okay. So I was confused with something different. All right. I'm stupid. You're right.
No, we're all personally cultured here, so.
I'm talking about everything I don't know nothing about.
He said it.
So, I mean, that, I can definitely see where that would
If you think about it, it's all kind of
ruffle
connected.
some feathers.
A lot of I like to think that, like, I'm a big believer in, like, the simplest thing is probably the realest thing. So, like, realistically, the simplest thing would be that Lee Harvey Oswald was crazy. But that's only if you're looking at it hyper focused on who killed this person, not why.
But the guy that
the why.
But the guy that
Well,
killed Lee Harvey Oswald loved JFK so much,
Well,
he just had to
he was
get
part of the mob.
retribution.
He was part of the mob. So here's my thing, right? The most elegant solution that wraps up all of the threads, not just the who killed him, why killed him, not just he was a crazy guy and this is what happened. It was more like the mob connections, the Marilyn Monroe stuff, the Illinois thing, who killed Lee Harvey Oswald and why, like all the Cuba thing, like all the conspiracy stuff that is connected to it, and all the just the communism and all that, like a lot of those things are answered by the fact that we've slowly pieced it together that they're connected, right? The mob, now we know, did have some kind of connections with his family, right? How deep those connections are debated, but we know that they had some kind of connections with him.
So
We know
there's
that
so many questions, though. What does the mob gain from killing him? I mean,
it's not always that. Okay,
well, the mob isn't stupid. I'm sure they're thinking long game here. They're not thinking, oh, he didn't deliver, so, let's put a cap in his ass. I mean, they've got a plan
I think it was
beyond
I
that.
think I think it was a matter of like, okay, he didn't deliver, but then on top of not delivering, he's sicking his brother on us and exposing La Costa Nostra, right? Like the thing that's theirs or whatever. Like he's exposing that they exist, that they're real, that there's this underbelly that's controlling things all over the world, all over the country, right? That they have the grasp of the unions and how the Teamsters are wrangled into it, and like that is way more of an existential threat to their way of life than him not fulfilling a promise.
But let's
right?
just say this. I'm part of the mob, and I've got JFK in my back pocket. But JFK needs some fresh meat for his little brother. And I've got some folks in my family that I need to get, that need to get dealt with. So if the mob is still in ties with JFK, they're feeding him. These are the people you can go after. These are the people you cannot go after.
Well, my understanding of it is JFK was heavily influenced by his dad, right? His dad was kind of like the head of, he was very old school. He listened to his father. He did what his dad told him to do, type thing.
Yeah.
His dad was the one with the connects. His dad was the one with the money. His dad was the one that literally like dragged them into what they became as a family. So by the time he won and all the stuff started going awry when it comes to like their connections with the mob and whatnot, the dad had like a stroke or something, if I'm not mistaken, and like it's either a stroke or he had some kind of illness. Something happened to the dad where he wasn't all there,
Yeah.
and he didn't have that say or that control over them anymore, over his sons anymore. And that's where the influence or the wisdom of like, hey, these aren't the guys to not listen to it. These aren't the guys to like. These aren't the guys. You don't do this. There's people you cross, and there's people you don't cross, right? So maybe it's that, like, you know what I mean? Maybe it's a little bit of that, and a little bit of
maybe they had nothing to do with
it. Maybe they had nothing to do with it. Maybe they were super like altruistic at the end of it, or like they used something negative to get empowered, but they really believed that they can do good once they were there. Who knows, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe they had nothing to do with it.
Here's my thing. Let's see. He was shot in what year? 63?
62, 63.
How many years ago is that? 13. It's almost 60.
48.
Almost 60.
58.
Yeah, almost 60
like that,
years. Right? Why do we still not have the whole government papers released on this? Each president,
they're going to get released.
Each president keeps pushing it back.
Yeah.
Well,
that goes to the next connection.
Why, when we get them, is it going to be bullshit? Because it's going to be on JFK, blacked out, the end. Well, that was, fucking worth the wait right there. I mean, what?
They say a majority of the Warren Commission has been released. Most of the documents have been released, but not in full.
Exactly.
Like they're partially out there, and there's still like some like 80 to 100 files or something that are still classified.
Who are they protecting?
So,
who's protecting who? It's 60 years ago. Well, the people involved are dead.
You have to. That's why they had the release date. That's 50 years in the future, anyway.
The institutions around what happened are not dead.
Like the
They just didn't want anybody that was involved to be held responsible in any kind of format at all.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of the conspiracy theories have to do with like with J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI being involved in some kind of way, and I mean that's a whole other side of the conspiracy.
That's a big thing because J. Edgar Hoover had information on everyone.
Way too much power. Yeah,
and he could have been behind this, a part of this conspiracy as well. I mean, maybe that. I mean, I'm reaching out on a limb here, but maybe he was working as an intermediary with some other person to say, hey, look, you got to do this, you got to do that, or or else, you know what I mean? Like, I'll expose your influences here if you don't do this. I don't know what J. Edgar Hoover specifically has for that, but he had stuff on everyone, and nobody could touch the guy for a long time.
That's the problem with any of this stuff that you try to unpackage. It's just there's so much corruption and stuff you don't know about, and it's
in this era though. it's crazy how much of this shit links back to J. Edgar Hoover and how much influence and power the FBI had, how much money he had, how many connections he had. He was like Varys from Game of Thrones, fucking gone amok,
Oh yeah,
right?
he was the
Like the guy,
whisperers. Yeah,
yeah,
well,
like but his little birds had guns and suits,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
in fact, he put them in. You know, he put the guns and suits into their repertoire there. But yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, I'm sure had pictures of him with Marilyn Monroe. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And he was probably just manipulating and playing him behind the scene. But you have that. You've got the the communist, you know, possible
Red and the
communists
Cold
that are
War
going
stuff.
after him. You got but I would venture to say that there might even be some people in his own party that didn't like what he was doing, and one of uh, the biggest benefactors of his death was Lyndon B. Johnson,
Yeah,
and he didn't even waste he didn't waste 30 minutes before he was on a plane with his president. I mean, I don't know how long it took, a couple hours or something, and he's
I mean
already
that's protocol.
listed as the president.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean that makes sense. They didn't know who did it or why, and it could have been an attack by a foreign power. It could have been Cuba, or it could have been
Yeah, I'm not
Russia
saying
or
that.
whatever.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. It's just kind of fishy to have that. Also, um, you know, JFK's wife sitting there on the plane in the still bloodied up dress and everything, and
It's
and it's
She
really
hands in
weird.
that damn
It
dress.
is really, really freaking
well,
weird.
there's so many. There's so much. There's so many. There's so many. You can't. I think, and I think that's probably on purpose. You know, the more
To obfuscate
the
the
more
truth.
theories you have, the harder it is to find the truth, right? So we've got, okay, there's a mob hit. All right, Lee Harvey Oswald's a nutcase. We've got now the Federal Reserve. He wants to do away with that. Okay, well that's going to piss somebody off. We got Fidel Castro. We got Lyndon Johnson.
The
The
Russians.
Russians. I mean, so everybody wants this guy dead, and I mean, everybody wants him
And then
dead,
you
but who
tie
did
all
it?
that.
Well, how many more people
J.
can you
Edgar
step
Hoover.
on and piss off before you
But
do die? Though?
how
I mean,
many? The better thing is, are any of these things connected in any way? Right. So
Follow
you
the
have
money,
J.
man.
Edgar
It's
Hoover.
always money. Always money.
Yeah. So J. Edgar Hoover has information on everybody, and he's like hyper patriotic and controlling, right? He finds out through his connections or whatever that in his head Kennedy's compromised, right? Kennedy's been compromised. Kennedy's an agent of some Italian, uh, you know, criminal organization or whatever, and his father is involved in the whole thing, and their whole family's, a bunch of gangsters and stuff, and they managed to, through their money and influence with the unions and whatnot, they got this guy involved. Then the first thing, one of the most controversial things he does is, which he probably agrees with, is he's very much against communism and whatnot. But then you hear about, like, oh, maybe this whole play against Cuba is more about hurting the mob, or a part of getting the mob to, paying the mob back. Maybe it was like let's hurt them let's hurt them for a while, so that, and then lift the embargo when they decide to play ball and sell some of these properties or something. We don't know, right? So, and that's one of the conspiracies too, right? So, like, what if Edgar Hoover gets a hold of this, right, and is like, we can't have this. This guy has too much power. He's super charismatic. Everyone loves this guy. We need to knock him out, take him out. Gets Harvey Oswald involved to be like, super Mr. Assassin or whatever. Sets him loose, gets him killed, and then has the mob send their guy to get rid of Harvey Oswald. And maybe he works with the mob and says, hey, you guys serve a purpose to an extent to help control things. how about we, one hand washes the other. We try this, we try that, because the FBI was super lax with them for a hot minute. I'm sure that he could have been. It's very strange that
That's
Mr.
that's
Hoover.
true, man. Because like you didn't hear a lot about the mob or anything till the '80s. Then the '80s it was like we got to shut down all this. Like, well, what happened?
Yeah, so they were. So you start exposing them in the 60s, then the people in the government that are exposing them die, right? And then they disappear, even though this guy who should have known for even before them, Hoover, didn't really make a big fuss about it. Doesn't seem like he disappears, he dies, 20, 30 years later, then it comes back up. And now it's like a look, oh, we didn't know that this was a thing. Like, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty
we
sure.
did.
Pretty sure we knew. Yeah, it's
Well, I just thought about something though, like that rifle that he was killed with, by Oswald was a what was it called, a Marcano?
it
or
was an
something like
Italian
that?
rifle, wasn't it?
It was an Italian
Yeah.
rifle, and if you're thinking about mobs and stuff, the Italian mobs ruled everything back then, and that's one of those things that like they would do, right? Like you see it in the movies. It's like kill him with this knife, or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Show
So he
him,
knows.
show what
Yeah.
what it means.
It's like so the family will know,
The
right?
family
Like
will know.
like the feds won't get it. All the people won't maybe get it, but they'll know.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? They'll know what that means.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like
Yeah, I mean that's a good
give you
point.
this
Why
special family knife, and go kill him.
why would he use an Italian rifle if he was trained with an American
it's,
rifle?
It's an Italian infantry rifle that the military used in Italy specifically. That is kind of rare to have around here. I don't know what the rarity back then was, but it's definitely rare now. And
It's pretty
that's
sketch.
just that's such a weird thing to do. And then if you and then I was thinking about this as soon as you brought up the topic, and I was thinking about this, I was like, with the book depository or whatever, where it is on the track where he's got to go. It's like the last place that you can actually see him. First of all, so it kind of makes sense that he'd be there because it's at the end of the parade route, right? Like there's fewer people there.
Well, yeah,
All this
you're
other
not going to
stuff,
have
but-
cops on both ends of you trying to leave. I mean, you're at the end of it.
Right. But like he had a whole block because there's like an L shape there where he comes. Basically, he would come. Kennedy would be coming towards you if you're in the book depository. He'd be coming towards you, and then he would take a right hand turn or hit a left hand turn for him. But it would be your right if you're from his position in the sniper's rest. As he takes that right hand turn and goes down into the to the tunnel, basically where he gets onto the highway, you got that entire block when he's coming at you, and they have to slow down for that super slow left hand turn for them. That is multiple shot opportunities if you're thinking it from my perspective. Like my thing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Why would you wait until he's halfway down the path, traveling past you, in order to shoot him the first
wind.
time?
Well, there's always the whole second shooter theory too, right?
Well, and then how many times were you told it like the entire time? How many times did he get shot? Do you guys remember?
He got shot twice.
Or how
There was
many shots were fired?
three shots were fired, but 2 hits.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so
The magic bullet.
3 shots in the span of a very short period of time. 2 of them were direct hits. The other one we have no idea where it went.
So,
It hit like it missed and hit like a.
is it true? Is it
Concrete
true the
barrier or
line
something.
from the whole speech in Full Metal Jacket, where he talks about Lee Harvey Oswald? You know, he shot this many times in this many seconds with an Italian bolt-action rifle, and he learned how to shoot in the Marines. So, was he actually in the Marines?
Marine. He was a
So he learned to
Marine.
shoot.
And he defected. He defected to the Soviet Union.
So in those years, he would have
And
learned to shoot with an M1, more than likely. So why? I mean, I'm just going back to why would he use an Italian rifle when he was trained with an M1. You would use what you know.
Yeah, I don't. What were the?
It was also probably way harder to get in a damn Italian like
Well, yeah,
that
you
rifle.
you could pick up an M1 at any pawn shop in the country. I mean, you could go out right now and buy an M1.
I don't know. Definitely sketchy.
And they're a great gun.
And you add to it like, so you have you would think too, like, who would be aware of a U.S. Marine that defected to the Soviet Union coming back because he didn't like it and he realized he wanted to be, he didn't have any way to spend his money, he didn't have any fun, he didn't get along with the culture or whatever, like he wanted to. So that's supposedly why he came back, right? Clearly that's not why he came back. But what if that was what he came back? But what if Mr. Hoover was like, hey, you know, you're technically a commie, and as far as the government's concerned, you supposedly defected to the Soviet Union. I could make your life very bad, or you could do this little thing, right? You could do this favor, right? We have this guy that we don't necessarily like. We think he might be one of your buddies, and if you do us a favor, we'll, one hand wash the other. We'll wipe your record clean, and you'll be free.
And maybe that was the whole thing. You're going to use this rifle because I want people to think it was the Italians that did it.
Right.
Or the Italian mob told them, this is what we want you to do, and he was working with the Italian mob.
I can see both.
And that's why they
many questions. So let's talk about the grassy knoll.
The grassy knoll.
The old grassy knoll. And the additional shooter. Where does this come from?
I think I don't know super well, but my understanding was that the trajectory of one of the shots doesn't make sense from where Harvey Oswald was, and they've done a bunch of studies and crap, and the most logical place based on all the old footage and how the terrain was and where people could have hidden and all that kind of jazz is that it came from this specific grassy knoll, from this direction, from this place.
How many shots did he get off at what speed? What's
3 of them? They were going about 20 to 30 miles an hour when they were going.
Hold on a second here. How many shots did we?
I know that part of it came from just the witnesses didn't know where it came from. So some of them were saying it came from over there, and they ran off in that
3
direction.
shots in 8.3 seconds. And how far away was he from?
He was halfway down that block.
Hold on.
That was going under that underpass. So it's probably like 300, probably 250 meters. Have you been there, Alan?
No, I've not been there.
I've been to that building. I've been to the grassy knoll. Get the conspiracy guys out there always peddling their stuff. They got the museum on the 6th floor there. If you look at that street right now, there's trees there, so you wouldn't even be able to get a shot off if you wanted to from that floor, from that 6th floor window. But
265 feet. So he was a football field, more or less. Little under a football field.
I was thinking yards, but yeah, I guess 260 feet. Okay, so 300 feet. That's not that far.
But to land 2 headshots.
Yeah, one went. This gets graphic. Sorry, guys. Anybody that's squeezed.
Well, we're not going to show it, but
no. I'm just talking about it. Some people get a. But one went through the neck first, and then went into the senator in the front seat. That's when he put his arms up like this.
And the other was a headshot.
The other one came from the back, and what I believe what they're saying is that it basically ricocheted off the front of his head and went backwards, and then blew out that whole section.
I'm just trying to think how difficult that would be in 8 seconds at 265 feet. just based on any rifles that I've shot
Okay,
before.
it's not impossible, but you have to be pretty darn good because you got to get back on target really fast. I mean, I've shot.
The pressure that you're under in that situation, you're shooting the president.
Well, also, if you've hit them,
And
It's a moving target. That's another good point.
If you hit him one time, I'm out. Like, if I could validate it, but with an assassination, you have to hit him twice, dude. Double tap. You can't. There's no reason for that person to live. They cannot live. So
no, they can't.
If you're an assassinator,
they would likely know.
And he might have missed. He might have missed, and then shot the third one and actually got him. I don't know if they know where that third one was shot.
That's pretty impressive shooting. That's all I'm saying from that distance.
Not only is the car moving, but the people inside of the car are moving, right? Then you have the wind. You have the fucking Secret Service agent that's freaking out when stuff starts going down. You have. And it's a very small
crowd.
time frame. As soon as the first shot, as soon as the shot is heard, I'm assuming the person's hitting the gas, right? So things are going to accelerate even faster. It's like, for you to get that many shots off in that short amount of time with that moving target, and then it just kind of sketch. And then you do it perfectly, and the trajectory for a couple of the shots is like, it ricocheted.
Here's another question to validate what I'm thinking. How far was the grassy knoll at that time?
The grassy knoll was like 50 feet or less. I mean, it's way closer to where he was actually shot.
So literally, you could have Oswald fire one shot, probably the missed shot, and this other person on the grassy knoll fire two shots, which makes way more sense for them to be. Your typing is really loud in your mic.
Sorry.
But wait a minute. So I haven't been there, so I don't know. Was there not people around this grassy knoll?
There were people up on the grass, basically by the side of the building. So there's a small road in a drive basically in front of the building, and then you have this little grassy area. And there was some people there, but like I said, this is the end of the parade route. This is at the very end of it where there's very few people around at this point. Most of the people were on Main Street, which they turned off of Main Street. They come down, I think it's Houston Avenue or something like that. And then that's when he's coming towards the depository. Then they take a left on Commerce Street. I think it's Commerce Street, whatever that street is, right in front of the book depository. So they take that left and they go down that street, and so they would have almost passed the building before you get to the grassy knoll area.
Go to the Badge Man on Wiki, or Badge Man, and it shows what seems to be a shot of the grassy knoll when it's happening, and a person in a police uniform with a sniper rifle or something like that, or a rifle, and it's like one of those additional evidence pieces that people say is proof that it was conspiracy.
You said it's the Badge Man.
Badge Man. Yeah. Badge Man, yeah. I'll put it in the chat too, just in case.
Okay, so we have this picture here showing the fatal shot. Badge Man is reputably, I can't even say that word, reputably located behind the stockade fence.
I can't make it heads or tails.
Exposure adjusted and large fingerprints are attempted to be edited out. Okay, so what? This is like UFO photos. Can't see.
I mean, it was 63, but the fact that there seems to be some kind of pictures that shows people even there in that area, and a cop would be a perfect person to pretend to be or to dress up as. Hypothetically,
where am I even looking for this in this picture?
Oh, that's a bad image. Let me find one for you here.
I mean, are we talking the dudes on the steps over there? Look at this one.
Put it in the room, Isaac, if you find it.
Oh, shit! That thing's like a block long. I've always thought my whole life I thought the grassy knoll was like a little hill that's like 10 feet around
behind the fence.
Apparently, I didn't know what the hell a knoll was.
Well, let me do it.
Okay, I see. Okay.
I don't know. It's wouldn't be super crazy is all I'm saying.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to argue it. I mean, I don't know. And then there was something about the Umbrella Man. Wasn't that person there or something?
Yeah. I think so.
Who knows?
All I know is there's a lot of connections, a lot of coincidences, a lot of strange overlapping, stories and reasons, and I don't know. There's smoke, there's fire, and there's definitely something to it.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you guys think? You think you would ultimately? We don't have to say what our ultimate theory is on this whole thing, but like,
yeah,
what
as much as they
yes
say
or no,
they don't. I'm sorry. What was the question then? Sorry.
So like a yes or no on it, right? Do you think it was a clear cut, just crazy guy shot the president, or do you think there's more to it? I think there's more.
No, I think there's more to it as well. I mean, the only thing that the Warren Commission was able to find was that, I mean, well, they said that they couldn't find any evidence that there was some kind of conspiracy, but I don't think that their motives were 100%. Well, we don't know what Oswald's motives were because he got killed early. Basically.
What happened to the dude that shot him?
Jack Ruby.
He died in prison.
How did he die in prison?
I could be wrong.
Let's follow it to the end.
What did happen to that? And that was kind of an odd thing too.
Was it?
Jack Ruby. The whole Jack Ruby being involved in it. I mean, it
says Ruby died of a pulmonary embolism and secondary to bronchogenic carcinoma,
lung cancer,
on January 1967. That could have been a perfect reason to select him to be hey Jack, we know you're already dying. You're going, you got the cancer. How about you do this thing? You serve a couple years in the pen. Worst case scenario,
take care of your family
taken care of. Yeah. Let's see. He died at Parkland. Supposedly, he found out about the cancer after, or like a month before he died. But who knows?
That's part of the redacted.
Yeah.
That's my thing, right? If it was just some crazy dude that shot a president, it'd be some crazy dude that shot a president. There wouldn't be files and files and files and more files. And did you see the other 4 boxes of files we have on this that are all redacted? So no, he was not just killed by some crazy dude. There's more to the story. That's my opinion.
Yeah, man. Yeah. What if it's something as simple as like Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't a Russian agent, and he got sent over here to assassinate Kennedy. He was successful, and we didn't want that to get out because we didn't want to go to war with Russia at the time. Like we just weren't, we just got out of a war not that long ago. It's pretty bad. It was very good. We didn't want to resort to the possibility of, nuclear stuff. Maybe it wasn't the head of the USSR. Maybe it was like some rogue, USSR person in the government, and the USSR is like, please, it wasn't us. We don't want to have a nuclear war. This guy's a psychopath.
I mean,
we'll keep it secret. Who
it
knows?
could be something
Could be
as simple
something as
as
simple
that.
as that.
I don't think so, but it could be.
But
I mean, that's just it. It doesn't matter what I think because we'll never know. So, man, all
like
we're gonna know is redacted.
I don't think so.
Or
I remember
I think once
quote,
it's far enough.
I remember a quote coming from somebody that's involved with the Warren Commission reporting that they said the public must be satisfied that Oswald was the assassin and that he did not have any Confederates who were still at large. I think that was the reasoning for doing the investigation and such. But it just kind of
there's a bunch of like Hoover quotes where he says essentially that he wanted to downplay how much evidence the FBI was responsible for gathering, not because he wanted to make it look like the FBI wasn't good or good at the job or whatever, and he didn't want to make the Dallas police force look bad. He didn't really care about any of those optics. It was more about him not wanting people to think it was like the Soviet Union. Like he didn't want people thinking that it was Russia, and he felt like them being involved and them being involved and them being so responsible for a lot of the police work, they kind of figured out the details, would make people think like there's something was sketchy and something was fishy, that they had to get involved, and that the federal government was the one that did this stuff and not the local police department. Like why was the FBI the ones that looked this up and not the Secret Service, or did all this police work and not the local police department or detectives? Like, why did it Hoover and his guys do all this and weren't involved?
I think we're either going to get redactedness or a bullshit story.
I think they expected things to blow over the course of 50 years, but that, like you said, the entities that were involved are more important now than they were back then, and they outlasted what the people, right? And now the FBI is super important. The mob didn't actually go away when they back then. They were still involved and probably still alive in some form. So like the Russia is still around, right? The USSR, it may be gone, but Russia as a whole is still around. Cuba's still around. Fidel Castro just fucking died a little while ago. Like there's all these things that could be connected in some way. The FBI is a big deal. Like if they had anything at all, the CIA, any of these guys had anything to do with this thing, it could shake like the people's faith in law enforcement, right? And like the rule of law and all that kind of stuff and all this jazz. So like maybe they are waiting longer. Maybe they're saying let's wait another 50 years, another 100 years. Eventually we'll get it. Is my thing. I think eventually we'll get it, but I think that they thought it's still too soon. People care too much. Look at all the fucking crazy thing we're talking about right now on a podcast. You know what I mean? People care too much, and that's why they haven't released it.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so
once people think of it as like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and stuff, and they're like, oh, it's back in my 200-300 years ago.
The reason why I don't think they'll even release any information or let that out then is because you still have that trust factor, and they want you to trust who this information has been disseminated by, even if it's BS. They still rather you get something that's redacted and all this other stuff than give you the actual information. So
I feel like we still, as like a as like a country, we still are too close to those times to it feeling different enough where we can trust them. But I think that in 100 years, when the culture has shifted significantly, and maybe like a lot of the stuff that divided us back then isn't prevalent now, and it feels much more different, maybe it's okay to use that as the opposite, right? Like here's why you can trust us. because we're gonna reveal this stuff. Here's like a nugget of thing that we can use to as a good favor, right? Like here's something that happened in our history that we're revealing, and this is why we're different. And it doesn't matter anymore, so it's not going to make a big difference in reality. But they can use it as a crumb to give the masses to make them feel like they care.
I will say.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Isaac.
I was going to say there's just nothing definitively, obviously, to this conversation, but it's definitely interesting to think about. And it's always going to be one of those questions I think that we're going to have that's unanswered. But
I was going to say, to wrap it up, we've talked about this for an hour. We know that JFK was shot by somebody, and we still don't know anything about what happened. So, like most of our podcasts did, we still don't know jack shit about what we're talking about. So, anyway, it was a good talk, though. I mean, I think we could, if you really wanted to research all this stuff, you could come up with your own conclusions. But, I mean, a lot of it's been done. But whatever. I mean,
shoot, I'm sure it's not like we sat here and read the fucking wiki for the last 4 days or looked at all the we're going off of just the shit that we remember from the time we've heard about.
I learned something new today about the whole Federal Reserve thing. I didn't know that angle on it, so I might dig myself into a hole tonight researching that. Probably not, but maybe. So.
I feel like we could probably touch on this later on.
Once I figure it all out, once I put all the pieces together, I'm going to come back with y'all and give you the 100% facts.
Thumbtacks and string.
I'm getting on Amazon.
You get the strings with the pictures on the wall.
I'm getting on Amazon right after this to see if I can buy a string board where I can do all that.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you guys want to go check out our website, partiallycultured.com, leave us a comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If you enjoyed this at all or any of our episodes, if you want to do all the shit, the likes and the clickies and all the bullshit, whatever you're listening to it on. So anyway, until next week, we'll see you guys.